Aidan Mercer gripped the railing of the observation deck, watching as the massive Navorian warship eclipsed the stars. The vessel's obsidian hull, adorned with intricate silver patterns that glowed like veins of starlight, seemed to devour the darkness around it. Despite his diplomatic training, Aidan couldn't suppress a shiver. Impressive, isn't it? Ambassador Harlow appeared beside him, her weathered face tense despite the practiced smile. One Navorian dreadnought carries enough firepower to level half a continent. They have 30 in their fleet. And we have 6, Aidan replied quietly. Which is why this mission cannot fail. Harlow handed him a data tablet. I've reviewed your file again. 29 years old, specialized in xenolinguistics, for successful diplomatic missions, but none involving the Navorians. Aidan's fingers tightened around the tablet. I've spent 3 years studying their language and customs. There are only 6 humans alive who can speak fluent Navorian, and I'm one of them. Language isn't the issue. The Navorians understand us perfectly. Harlow's voice lowered. It's their temperament that's the problem. They're warriors, bound by ancient codes and rituals most humans find incomprehensible. The ship's communication system chimed. Ambassador, we're receiving docking instructions from the Navorian vessel. Harlow straightened her formal uniform. This is just a preliminary meeting. We observe, we listen, we say nothing controversial. The actual negotiations begin tomorrow on Proxima Station. Aidan nodded, but an uneasy feeling settled in his stomach as they walked toward the airlock. His research indicated the Navorians rarely invited foreign diplomats aboard their vessels. Something had changed. The Navorian delegation awaited them in a cavernous chamber with ceilings that disappeared into darkness. Their tall, broad-shouldered forms towered over the humans, their skin a deep indigo that seemed to shimmer with tiny points of light, like stars embedded in flesh. Most imposing was their leader, Sovereign Drax, whose ceremonial armor bore markings that Aidan recognized as signs of countless victories. Beside the Sovereign stood a female Navorian whose regal bearing and elaborate silver adornments marked her as someone of importance. Unlike the others, whose expressions remained impassive, her violet eyes burned with barely contained fury. Aidan maintained the formal stance his research had indicated was proper, eyes lowered, hands visible but relaxed. Ambassador Harlow stepped forward. Sovereign Drax, we are honored by your invitation and look forward to productive discussions. The Navorian translator relayed her words, though Aidan detected several subtle inaccuracies in the translation. Before he could decide whether to intervene, Sovereign Drax spoke, his voice deep and resonant. The time for discussions has ended, the translator conveyed. Your outpost in the Carillon system has violated sovereign Navorian territory. This constitutes an act of war. Harlow paled. There must be some mistake. The Carillon outpost is a scientific research facility, well within the boundaries established by the preliminary accords. Aidan noticed the female Navorian's expression darken further. When she spoke, her voice carried the musical cadence that marked high Navorian nobility. The human lies, the translator said flatly. Our sensors detected weapons installations being constructed beneath the surface of Carillon 4. Aidan frowned at the translation. The Navorian word she had used, Kathravesk, didn't simply mean lies. It specifically implied treachery against an oath-bound ally, a grave accusation in their culture. Before Harlow could respond, Aidan stepped forward and addressed the Navorians directly in their language, his careful pronunciation capturing the complex harmonics of their speech. Esteemed ones, I humbly request clarification. Our understanding of the Carillon boundaries differs from yours. Perhaps we might review the star charts together to resolve this misunderstanding. A ripple of surprise passed through the Navorian delegation. The female's violet eyes narrowed as she studied him. Sovereign Drax regarded Aidan with newfound interest. You speak our tongue. Rarely have we encountered humans with such ability. I have studied your magnificent language for many years, though I still have much to learn, Aidan replied with the formal humility appropriate when addressing Navorian royalty. The female stepped forward. Father, this changes nothing. The humans encroach upon our territories while speaking words of peace. Action must be taken. Father. Aiden realized with a jolt that this must be Princess Seraphina, the sovereign's daughter and military strategist whose tactical brilliance had become legendary even among humans. Ambassador Harlow intervened. If I may, we were unaware of any boundary dispute. We would be happy to withdraw from any contested areas while negotiations proceed. The translator relayed her words, but Aiden noticed something alarming in the translation. The Navorian phrase used implied not withdrawal but surrender. Ambassador, Aiden whispered urgently, the translation is too late. Sovereign Drax's expression hardened. You offer surrender? Then you admit your transgression. No. Harlow looked stricken. That's not what I. The die of judgment has been cast, Drax declared. By your own admission, Earth stands guilty. Princess Seraphina's lips curved in what might have been satisfaction. The fleet stands ready, Father. Aiden's mind raced through his knowledge of Navorian law. There was one ancient custom, rarely invoked but still binding. Sovereign Drax, he said, his voice steady despite his pounding heart, I respectfully invoke the right of Telvarks. The chamber fell silent. Princess Seraphina's violet eyes widened in shock. You know of the Telvarks? Drax asked, his voice hushed. I do. Aiden maintained formal posture, though his pulse raced. When nations stand at the precipice of war, Navorian law permits a union between houses to forge peace. I offer myself as Earth's representative in such a union. Ambassador Harlow grabbed his arm. Mercer, what are you doing? Aiden kept his eyes on the sovereign. Preventing a war, Ambassador. Drax studied him with newfound intensity. The Telvarks requires balance. You would need to unite with someone of equal standing to the offense caused. Given the severity of Earth's transgression. His gaze shifted to his daughter. Princess Seraphina's composure shattered. Father. You cannot possibly suggest. Silence, daughter. Drax's voice was firm but not unkind. Our laws are clear. The human has invoked ancient right. And your recent incidents at court make this an opportune solution. Aiden fought to keep his expression neutral. He had offered himself as a diplomatic sacrifice, expecting to be paired with some minor noble. Not the princess herself. Sovereign, Harlow interjected desperately, surely there are other solutions. Captain Mercer acted without authorization. Yet he spoke with the voice of Earth, Drax replied. The Telvarks has been invoked and cannot be withdrawn. He turned to Aiden. Do you understand what you have done, human? You have bound yourself to my daughter, the Princess Seraphina. The union must be genuine and lifelong, or the peace is void. Aiden swallowed hard, feeling the weight of billions of lives on his shoulders. Princess Seraphina stared at him with undisguised horror and fury. I understand, he said quietly. Then it is decided. The ceremony will take place tomorrow. Drax's expression softened slightly. You have saved many lives today, human. Whether yours will be among them depends on how well you please my daughter. As the Navorian delegation departed, Seraphina lingered. She approached Aiden with predatory grace, her voice pitched low so only he could hear. You may have prevented war today, she whispered in perfect English, but you have condemned yourself to something far worse. I will make you regret your heroism, Aiden Mercer. She swept away, leaving Aiden to wonder if he had just saved his planet or doomed himself. Mercer, Harlow hissed when they were alone, do you have any idea what you've done? Aiden watched Seraphina's retreating form, the silver patterns on her midnight blue skin catching the light. Bought us time, Ambassador. And perhaps something more. You've bound yourself to the most feared warrior princess in the quadrant. They call her the Stellar Scourge, she's destroyed entire fleets. Then it's fortunate I'm marrying her instead of facing her in battle. Aiden attempted a smile that felt brittle even to him. Besides, I saw something in her eyes besides anger. What? Fear. Aiden frowned thoughtfully. Something about this arrangement frightens her as much as it does me. And I intend to find out what. As they returned to their ship, Aiden gazed out at the stars, wondering what the morning would bring. He had studied Navorian marriage customs, of course, but never imagined he would experience them firsthand. Particularly not with a princess whose legendary temper had apparently earned her the title, Stellar Scourge. Yet beneath his apprehension, Aiden felt a flicker of curiosity. Princess Seraphina was unlike any being he had ever encountered, fierce, proud, and hiding secrets behind those violet eyes. Whatever awaited him in the Navorian royal court, it would certainly not be boring. And perhaps, just perhaps, this forced union might lead to the genuine understanding between their species that had eluded diplomats for decades. Though based on the murderous glare Seraphina had given him, Aiden suspected his first challenge would be simply surviving the honeymoon. The Navorian royal palace sprawled like a crystalline forest against the violet skies of Never Prime. Massive spires of what appeared to be obsidian glass twisted upward, interconnected by translucent bridges that shimmered with internal light. From his balcony, Aiden could see 3 moons hanging low on the horizon, their surfaces etched with the unmistakable patterns of Navorian architecture. Magnificent, isn't it? Aiden turned to find Thorn, Princess Seraphina's cousin and apparently his only ally in the palace, leaning against the doorway. Unlike most Navorians, whose demeanor remained rigidly formal, Thorn displayed a casual curiosity about humans that bordered on inappropriate by local standards. It's unlike anything on Earth, Aiden admitted, turning back to the view. I'm surprised Seraphina gave you chambers with such a prime view. Thorn joined him at the railing. Though perhaps not surprised she placed you in the opposite wing from her own quarters. 3 days had passed since the marriage ceremony, an elaborate 6-hour ritual involving blood oaths, stellar alignments, and vows spoken in ancient Navorian that even Aiden struggled to pronounce. Throughout it all, Seraphina had maintained a glacial composure, speaking only when tradition required it. The moment the ceremony concluded, she had disappeared into her private chambers, leaving Aiden to navigate the hostile labyrinth of court politics alone. Has she always been so? Aiden searched for a diplomatic term. Intense? Terrifying? Liable to reduce grown warriors to tears with a single glance? Thorn's bioluminescent markings pulsed with amusement. Seraphina wasn't always this way. There was a time when her laughter echoed through these halls. Aiden raised an eyebrow. I find that difficult to imagine. The expedition changed her. Thorn's expression grew somber. 5 cycles ago, she led a research mission to the Veiled Nebula. Something happened there, something she refuses to discuss. Half her crew never returned. A servant appeared at the doorway, bowing deeply. Human consort, the princess requests your presence in the star chamber. Thorn's eyes widened. The star chamber? Already? Most consorts wait months before being granted such access. Is that significant? Aiden asked quietly as they followed the servant through corridors lined with what appeared to be liquid metal. The star chamber is Seraphina's personal sanctuary. It houses the most complete stellar maps in the quadrant. Thorn gave him a meaningful look. She permits no one to enter, not even her father. The servant led them to a massive door inscribed with constellations Aiden didn't recognize. The princess awaits within. Only the human consort may enter. Aiden glanced at Thorn, who offered an encouraging nod. Remember, beneath the armor lies a heart, even if she's forgotten it herself. The doors parted silently, revealing a circular chamber whose walls, floor, and ceiling appeared to be transparent, giving the disorienting impression of floating in space. Stars, planets, and nebulae surrounded Aiden, so perfectly rendered he instinctively held his breath as if exposed to vacuum. In the center stood Princess Seraphina, her tall figure illuminated by the glow of a holographic star system rotating between her hands. Without her ceremonial armor, dressed in a simple tunic that left her arms bare, she appeared younger, less formidable, though no less regal. My advisors tell me you've been asking questions about our stellar cartography, she said without looking up. Why? Aiden approached carefully, studying the holographic display. The disputed Carillon system. I wanted to understand the discrepancy between our navigational charts. There is no discrepancy. Serafina's violet eyes met his. Your people lied. Or perhaps both sides worked from incomplete information. Aiden gestured to the hologram. May I? After a moment's hesitation, Serafina stepped aside. Aiden manipulated the display, focusing on the system's unusual binary stars. Earth stellographers measured the gravitational influence from this position, he explained, highlighting a region. Based on those calculations, the boundary falls here, placing Carillon 4 in neutral territory. Your measurements fail to account for the temporal flux caused by the dwarf star's unusual rotation. Serafina moved beside him, her arm brushing his as she adjusted the display. The true boundary shifts by 12 parsecs during each lunar cycle. Aiden studied the new calculations, their proximity momentarily forgotten. You're right. This changes everything. He turned to her, excitement overriding caution. If we present this data to both governments, it changes nothing. Serafina's voice hardened. The weapons installation remains an act of aggression. What weapons installation? I've seen no evidence. You call me liar? Her skin's bioluminescence flared with indignation. I'm saying we have different information. Aiden held his ground despite her intimidating posture. Show me your evidence, and I'll present it to Earth's Council personally. Serafina studied him with narrowed eyes. You truly don't know. Know what? Instead of answering, she waved her hand, transforming the display into detailed scans of what appeared to be an underground facility beneath Carillon IV's surface. These readings were taken 3 lunar cycles ago. The energy signatures matched Terran particle weapons. Aiden studied the scans with growing unease. The facility existed, that much was clear, but Ambassador Harlow had assured him the Carillon outpost was purely scientific. I need to contact Earth, he said quietly. Impossible. Serafina deactivated the hologram. No unauthorized communications leave the palace. You are Navorian now, by your own choice. A choice made to prevent war. If Earth truly has built weapons in contested space, then you have bound yourself to your enemy's daughter. Serafina's expression remained unreadable. How unfortunate for you. Aiden took a deep breath. I don't believe we're enemies. Rivals, perhaps. Strangers, certainly. But this marriage offers an opportunity to become something else. And what would that be? Allies, to start with. Aiden met her gaze steadily. Perhaps eventually friends. A sound escaped her that might have been a laugh, short, rusty, as if rarely used. Humans. Always so, optimistic. She turned away, moving to what appeared to be a control console. You will remain in the palace until I determine your true motives. In the meantime, you will learn our ways. I've studied your culture extensively. You have studied texts and recordings. It is not the same. She pressed a sequence of controls, causing part of the floor to reconfigure into a low table bearing what appeared to be food. Beginning with our cuisine. Sit. Recognizing an order when he heard one, Aiden sat cross-legged on the cushion opposite her. The dishes between them contained substances that pulsed with internal light or shifted color when touched. Serafina selected a crystal goblet filled with luminescent blue liquid. Starfall nectar. Rare and difficult to harvest. A traditional gift between newly bonded pairs. Her eyes challenged him over the rim. It is also mildly toxic to most species. A test of compatibility. Aiden accepted the goblet, remembering his xenobiology briefings. Navorian physiology processed certain minerals humans could not, but the reverse was also true. To new beginnings, he said in formal Navorian, and took a careful sip. The liquid burned like fire and ice simultaneously, spreading a tingling sensation through his chest. He managed not to cough, though his eyes watered. Serafina watched him intently. "You survive. Impressive." "Disappointed?" Aiden managed a smile through the lingering burn. "Merely surprised." She selected a morsel from another dish. "This contains nutrients your species requires but cannot synthesize naturally. If you are to survive here, you must adapt to our sustenance." As the meal progressed, Aiden realized this strange dining experience was, in its way, an olive branch. Serafina was ensuring he could survive in her world. "Why the star chamber?" he asked eventually. "Why grant me access to your sanctuary?" Serafina paused, setting down a utensil. "Because here, we cannot be overheard. The court has factions. Some welcome this alliance. Others see you as a threat to be eliminated." "And which faction do you belong to, princess?" "I serve neither. Nothing more." She studied him with those unsettling violet eyes. "Tomorrow, you begin combat training." Aiden nearly choked on his food. "Combat training? I'm a diplomat, not a warrior. You are the consort of a royal princess. Your weakness reflects upon me." She stood in a fluid motion. "Be at the training arena at first light. Wear the garments provided in your quarters." As she moved toward the door, Aiden called after her. "The facility on Carillon 4, what if I can prove it isn't what you think?" Serafina paused. "Then you would have my attention, human." "Aiden," he corrected gently. "If we're to be married, perhaps you could use my name." She regarded him silently for a long moment. "First light, Aiden. Do not be late." After she departed, Aiden remained in the star chamber, marveling at the stellar display surrounding him. Lost in thought, he nearly missed the subtle vibration from the communication device hidden in his boot, the emergency beacon Ambassador Harlow had insisted he carry. He extracted the small device, activating its secure interface. "Urgent, extraction team standing by. Palace security patterns mapped. Respond with confirmation for retrieval at next lunar alignment." Aiden stared at the message, conflict churning within him. Earth wanted him back, which meant they never expected the marriage alliance to last. He was meant to be a temporary distraction, not a genuine peace offering. Whatever was happening on Carillon 4, his own government hadn't been honest with him. He thought of Serafina, her fierce pride, her unexpected concern for his dietary needs, the hint of vulnerability when she mentioned court factions. There was more to the Navorian princess than the fearsome reputation that preceded her. Aiden deleted the message without responding, then crushed the device underfoot. Whatever game Earth was playing, he refused to be their pawn. He had made vows, ancient, binding promises that even Serafina, who clearly resented their union, seemed determined to honor. He would do no less. The training arena echoed with the sound of Aiden's body hitting the padded floor for what felt like the 100th time that morning. "Your balance is wrong," Serafina stated flatly, circling him with predatory grace. "You shift your weight to the forward foot before striking." Aiden dragged himself upright, muscles screaming in protest. The lightweight training uniform clung to him, soaked with sweat. On Earth, that's proper technique for generating power. Power means nothing if your opponent sees the strike coming. She demonstrated a fluid movement that seemed to defy physics. Navorian combat flows like stellar currents. Continuous. Unpredictable. He attempted to mimic her movement and failed spectacularly, earning a disapproving click from Serafina. "Perhaps we should begin with more basic instruction," she said, approaching him. "Your stance first." Without warning, she moved behind him, her hands on his shoulders adjusting his posture. Aiden froze at the unexpected contact. Despite the formidable strength evident in her grip, her touch was surprisingly gentle. "Tension here," she said, one hand sliding to his lower back, "undermines flexibility here." Her other hand lightly tapped his shoulder. Aiden became acutely aware of her proximity, the subtle scent of something like night-blooming flowers emanating from her skin. Her height meant she stood eye to eye with him, her face close enough that he could see flecks of silver in her violet irises. "Better," she murmured, stepping away. "Now, again." They continued for another hour, Serafina demonstrating increasingly complex movements while Aiden struggled to keep up. To his surprise, she displayed remarkable patience, correcting without mockery. As they finished, Thorn appeared at the arena's edge, his expression troubled. "Princess, urgent news from the border patrols. Another incursion near the Carillon system." Serafina's posture instantly shifted from instructor to warrior. "Confirmed." 3 Earth vessels crossed the boundary line. When challenged, they opened fire. Aiden stepped forward. "That's impossible. Earth wouldn't." Silence. Serafina's voice cracked like lightning. The warmth he'd glimpsed during their training vanished, replaced by cold fury. "You claim ignorance while your people prepare for war. If Earth ships fired, they weren't acting on official orders," Aiden insisted. "Let me contact Ambassador Harlow. There must be an explanation." "The time for explanations has passed." Serafina's eyes blazed. "The Sovereign Council convenes in 1 hour to discuss our response. As my consort, you will attend." "Serafina," Aiden said softly, dropping formal address, "please. Whatever's happening, escalating the conflict serves neither of our peoples." For a moment, something like uncertainty flickered across her features. Then her expression hardened once more. 1 hour, human. Dress appropriately." She swept from the arena, leaving Aiden with a sinking feeling that their fragile progress had just been undone. Thorn lingered, glancing around before approaching. "Not all is as it appears," he whispered. Serafina's ship detected anomalies in the energy signatures of the Earth vessels. "She suspects." He stopped abruptly as a palace guard entered. "The human consort is summoned to prepare for council," the guard announced. As Aiden followed, his mind raced. Anomalies in the energy signatures. What had Thorn been about to say? And more importantly, what game was being played here, and by whom? The Sovereign Council chamber hummed with tension as Aiden entered alongside Serafina. Concentric rings of hovering platforms surrounded a central holographic display, each occupied by high-ranking Navorians whose bioluminescent patterns pulsed with agitation. As Serafina's consort, Aiden had been given ceremonial attire, midnight blue with silver accents that matched Serafina's more elaborate regalia. Sovereign Drax occupied the highest platform, his imposing figure radiating authority. His eyes narrowed slightly at Aiden's appearance. "The human attends as witness," Drax announced, his voice echoing. "The bonds of Telvarks grant him this right, though he speaks only when addressed directly." Serafina guided Aiden to a platform that rose to position them at mid-level in the chamber. "Remain silent unless asked a direct question," she murmured. "Some here would use any breach of protocol as evidence against you." "Evidence of what?" Aiden whispered. "Treachery." Her violet eyes held a warning. "These proceedings are not what they appear." Before Aiden could ask more, Drax activated the central hologram, displaying 3 Earth vessels engaging with Navorian patrol ships. The footage showed the Earth ships firing first, a clear act of aggression. The evidence is undeniable, intoned a heavily decorated Navorian whom Aiden recognized as Admiral Joreth, head of the Imperial fleet. "Earth has violated our territory and attacked our vessels. The marriage alliance has failed. I recommend immediate military response." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the chamber. Aiden studied the holographic display, something nagging at his attention. The Earth vessel's movement patterns seemed off. Too aggressive, too direct. Earth captains were trained in evasive tactics when outgunned, yet these ships charged directly into Navorian firepower. "If I may address the council," Serafina's voice cut through the growing clamor. I request permission to investigate these incidents personally before military action is authorized. Admiral Joratha's bioluminescent patterns flashed with disapproval. Princess, your judgment may be compromised by your connection to the human. My judgment is guided by the Empire's interests, Serafina replied coolly. If Earth is truly mobilizing for war, we must understand their strategy. These provocations seem designed to trigger our response. Sovereign Drac studied his daughter. You suspect deception. I suspect complexity beyond what we are being shown. Serafina's gaze swept the chamber. Give me 3 cycles to investigate with my personal vessel. If I confirm hostile intent, I will lead the attack myself. And the human? Jorath demanded. He cannot be permitted to contact Earth. My consort remains with me, Serafina stated firmly. His insights into Earth tactics may prove valuable. After tense deliberation, Drax nodded. 3 cycles, daughter. No more. As the council dispersed, Aiden caught Thorn giving him a significant look from across the chamber. Something was happening beneath the surface of these proceedings, political currents Aiden couldn't yet navigate. Back in the relative privacy of a transport vessel heading toward Serafina's personal ship, Aiden finally spoke. Those weren't Earth vessels, were they? Serafina's eyes widened slightly. Explain your reasoning. The attack patterns were wrong. Earth captains are trained to preserve their vessels at all costs. These ships fought like they were disposable. Aiden met her gaze steadily. Someone's trying to provoke a war. After a long moment, Serafina nodded. The energy signatures weren't consistent with Earth technology. Subtle differences, but enough to raise questions. Why didn't you say that in the council? Because I don't know who to trust. Her voice dropped. There are factions within the Empire who believe war with Earth is inevitable, who would prefer to strike first, while we maintain technological superiority. The transport docked with a sleek vessel unlike any Navorian ship Aiden had seen. Where most Imperial craft featured aggressive lines and obvious weaponry, this ship's design was streamlined, built for stealth rather than intimidation. The Nightshade, Serafina explained as they boarded. My personal research vessel. The interior revealed a small but efficient ship clearly designed for a minimal crew. Holographic displays lined the walls, many showing star charts and anomalous energy readings. You've been investigating this for some time, Aiden realized. Since before our marriage. Serafina activated the ship's systems with a wave of her hand. The Carillon dispute was merely one element of a pattern. Someone is manipulating both our governments. Who? That's what we're going to discover. She turned to face him, her expression solemn. What I'm about to show you violates multiple Imperial protocols. If you betray this confidence, the consequences will be severe. I made vows to you, Aiden said quietly. Whether you believe it or not, I intend to honor them. Something flickered in her eyes, not quite trust, but perhaps its precursor. She led him to what appeared to be the ship's medical bay, where a sealed container pulsed with eerie light. 5 cycles ago, my expedition to the Veiled Nebula encountered something unknown. Serafina's voice had lost its usual commanding tone, replaced by something almost vulnerable. A derelict vessel of neither Earth nor Navorian design. She activated a control panel, causing the container to become transparent. Inside floated a crystalline structure that seemed to shift and flow, neither solid nor liquid. We found this aboard, the only remnant of the crew. Her hand hovered near the container but didn't touch it. When exposed to direct contact, it changed members of my team. Changed how? Aiden asked, unease crawling up his spine. Their minds remained, but their loyalties shifted. They began sabotaging our mission, claiming to serve higher interests. Pain flickered across her features. I lost half my crew before we contained the infection. Aiden understood suddenly why Serafina had developed her fearsome reputation, not from cruelty but from necessity. She'd had to fight her own people, perhaps even execute infected crew members. You think whatever this is, it's infiltrated both our governments? I've tracked unusual energy signatures matching this substance to multiple locations, including your Carillon outpost and several Imperial facilities. Serafina's gaze was intense. Someone is using this technology to push our species toward mutual destruction. But why? What would anyone gain from? The ship's alert system blared suddenly. Serafina rushed to the bridge, Aiden close behind. A holographic display showed 3 vessels approaching, Imperial design but emitting the same anomalous energy signature they'd been discussing. "We've been followed," Serafina hissed, sliding into the pilot's chair. "They must have tracked us from the palace." "Who are they?" "Officially, Admiral Joratha's security detail." Her hands flew over the controls. "Actually, I suspect they're already compromised." The pursuing vessels opened fire, their weapons impacting the Nightshade's shields with devastating force. "Can we outrun them?" Aiden asked, strapping into the co-pilot seat. "Not with conventional methods." Serafina activated a complex sequence of controls. "Hold tight. This will be unpleasant." The stars outside seemed to stretch and distort as the ship accelerated beyond anything Aiden had experienced. His vision blurred, nausea rising as reality itself seemed to bend around them. When the sensation passed, they were orbiting a small, unremarkable moon. "Where are we?" Aiden managed, fighting back dizziness. "The Forgotten Moon," Serafina replied, checking their systems. "An ancient Navorian sacred site, now abandoned. The gravitational anomalies surrounding it make it impossible to track vessels here." "You've done this before." "This is where I've been conducting my research." She powered down non-essential systems. "We should be safe temporarily." Aiden studied her profile as she worked, the determination in her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. The fearsome Princess Serafina suddenly seemed more comprehensible. She wasn't cold, she was carrying an impossible burden alone. "Why didn't you tell your father?" "About the infection, the conspiracy?" "Because I don't know how far it spread." She turned to face him. "The infected retain their memories, their personalities. Only their deepest allegiances change. Anyone could be compromised. Even Drax." "I pray not." For the first time, real emotion cracked through her composure. "But I cannot risk the Empire on faith alone." "Then why tell me?" Aiden asked softly. "Why trust me with this?" "Because you're the only one who cannot be infected." She gestured to medical readings on a nearby display. "The crystalline structure is incompatible with human physiology. I confirmed it with scans during your combat training." Aiden processed this revelation. "So our marriage was diplomatic necessity, yes." Serafina hesitated. "But also an opportunity to forge an alliance with someone I could trust absolutely. You married me because I'm immune to alien mind control." Aiden couldn't help a wry smile. "Not the most romantic proposal I've heard." To his surprise, Serafina's lips curved slightly. "Romance was not a priority when galactic peace hangs in the balance." "Fair enough." Aiden leaned forward, studying the star charts displayed on the console. "So what's our next move?" "We need to identify the central node of the infection." Serafina highlighted several locations across both Earth and Navorian space. "These outposts all show the anomalous energy signature. One must be controlling the others." Aiden examined the pattern, a realization dawning. "They're positioned along major trade routes. Positioned to monitor, or control, the flow of goods between our worlds." "Precisely. Whatever entity is behind this, they're manipulating our economies as well as our militaries." Serafina's voice hardened. "Leading us toward mutual destruction. Or mutual dependency on whatever they're offering as an alternative." Aiden pointed to a location at the edge of the display. "This outpost, it's not on any official Earth charts. The coordinates match a stellar anomaly we detected 3 cycles ago. Serafina expanded the display, showing readings from the location. Massive energy fluctuations consistent with a gateway of some kind. A gateway? To where? Unknown. But the readings match fragmentary data from the derelict vessel my team discovered. She met his gaze. I believe whatever came through that gateway is now orchestrating conflict between our peoples. A proximity alarm blared suddenly. 3 vessels had emerged from hyperspace nearby, the same ships that had pursued them from the palace. How did they find us? Aiden asked as Serafina rushed to restore power to the ship's systems. Unknown, but we can't remain here. Her expression was grim. The nightshade took damage in our escape. Our options are limited. Aiden studied the tactical display. That energy signature you mentioned, could it be how they're tracking us? Serafina's eyes widened. The crystalline sample, it must be resonating with their technology. Then we use that. Aiden pointed to the small moon below them. Can we land on the surface? Use the sacred site you mentioned. For what purpose? To set a trap. Aiden outlined his plan quickly. Serafina listened, her expression shifting from skepticism to consideration. It could work, she conceded. But it would require perfect timing. Do we have a choice? Their eyes met in silent understanding. Whatever their beginning, they now stood as true allies against a threat greater than either had imagined. The sacred site has chambers deep beneath the surface, Serafina said, adjusting their descent vector. If your plan fails. It won't, Aiden assured her, though uncertainty gnawed at him. Trust me. Serafina studied him for a long moment. I do, she said finally, the admission seeming to surprise her as much as him. May the ancient stars guide us both. The nightshade descended toward the cratered surface of the forgotten moon, carrying its unlikely pair of conspirators toward a confrontation that would determine the fate of both their worlds. The ancient temple complex beneath the moon's surface defied Aiden's expectations. Rather than the crystalline architecture of Navorian design, these chambers were carved from the moon's bedrock, their walls inscribed with spiral patterns that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. These ruins predate Navorian civilization, Serafina explained as they hurried through shadow-filled corridors. Our ancestors discovered them millennia ago and considered them sacred, though their purpose remains mysterious. They reached a vast circular chamber whose ceiling opened to the stars above. At its center stood a pedestal of the same material as the walls, spiraling upward like a frozen whirlpool. The confluence, Serafina whispered, an uncharacteristic awe in her voice. It said the first Navorians received visions of the stars here that led to our understanding of stellar navigation. Aiden placed the containment unit holding the crystalline sample on the pedestal. Will it work as we discussed? The pedestal amplifies energy, or at least, that's what the ancient texts claim. Serafina activated controls on her wrist device. The pursuing ships have entered the moon's atmosphere. We have minutes at most. They retreated to the shadowed periphery of the chamber as planned. Aiden found himself standing close to Serafina in the darkness, acutely aware of her presence, the subtle warmth of her skin, the faint glow of her bioluminescent patterns dimmed for concealment. If this fails, she said softly, I want you to know that your actions have honored the Telvarks beyond what I expected. Is that a compliment, Princess? Aiden smiled despite their dire situation. An observation. But something in her voice had softened. Few would have shown such loyalty to vows made under duress. They weren't made under duress. Not really. Aiden turned to face her in the darkness. I chose this path. I choose it still. Before she could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the chamber. Admiral Jorith entered, flanked by 4 Navorian soldiers. Their movements were strangely synchronized, their bioluminescent patterns pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. The crystalline signature leads here, Jorith announced, his voice oddly flat. Secure the chamber. As the soldiers spread out, their attention fixed on the pedestal where the sample gleamed. Seraphina tensed beside Aiden, her hand moving to the weapon at her hip. Jorith approached the pedestal, reaching toward the containment unit. The confluence will amplify the signal. The gateway will open. Now, Seraphina whispered. Aiden activated the remote detonator in his hand. The containment unit burst open, releasing the crystalline substance directly onto the pedestal. Rather than flowing outward as a liquid might, it adhered to the spiral patterns etched into the stone, illuminating them with pulsing blue-green light. Jorith and his soldiers froze, their bodies convulsing as the chamber filled with resonant energy. The pedestal's spirals began rotating, though the stone itself remained solid. "It's working," Seraphina breathed, awe and horror mingled in her voice. "The confluence is drawing the infection from their bodies." The crystalline substance grew along the pedestal's spirals, feeding on the energy being pulled from the infected Navorians. As it expanded, a holographic display formed above it, star charts, diagrams, and a language Aiden had never seen before. "It's revealing itself," Seraphina said, stepping forward despite the danger. "The entity's plan, its origins." The infected soldiers collapsed one by one as the crystalline entity abandoned their bodies, drawn to the more powerful conduit of the confluence. Admiral Jorith remained standing longest, his face contorted in a struggle between horror and relief. "Princess," he gasped, momentarily himself again. "Forgive me. I couldn't stop it, couldn't control." He collapsed as the last of the infection left his body, joining the growing crystalline structure on the pedestal. The holographic display expanded, showing a vast network spanning multiple galaxies. "It's not just our worlds," Aiden realized. "This entity has been spreading through countless civilizations, pushing them toward conflict." "A parasite that feeds on war," Seraphina agreed, studying the display. "But why reveal itself now?" The answer came as the crystalline structure began pulsing with increasing intensity. The holographic display showed a massive gateway forming, not just a passage between stars but between dimensions. "It's trying to bring more of its kind through," Aiden realized with horror. "Using the confluence to amplify its power. We need to destroy it." Seraphina raised her weapon, but Aiden caught her arm. "Wait. Look at the pattern it's creating." He pointed to fluctuations in the energy readings. "It's becoming unstable. If we disrupt it now, the dimensional tear could expand," Seraphina finished, understanding immediately. "Consuming the entire moon, possibly more. We need to contain it, redirect the energy." Aiden studied the ancient chamber. The confluence was designed to channel power. "What if we reverse the flow?" Seraphina's eyes widened. The sacred texts mentioned ritual inversions, ceremonies where the faithful would reverse the spiral patterns to commune with ancestral spirits. "How?" "Blood of the devoted, freely given." She drew a ceremonial dagger from her belt. "My blood carries the genetic markers of the ancient priesthood." Aiden caught her hand before she could cut her palm. "Not alone. We do this together." Their eyes met in silent communication, mutual trust where once there had been only suspicion. Seraphina nodded, extending the dagger's hilt toward him. "For both our worlds," she said softly. Aiden took the blade, making a shallow cut across his palm before passing it back to Seraphina, who did the same. Together, they pressed their bleeding hands against the chamber floor, where spiral patterns matching those on the pedestal had been carved into the stone. The effect was immediate. The patterns beneath their hands illuminated, but where the pedestal's spirals glowed blue-green, these burned with golden light. The illumination spread outward, counter-rotating against the pedestal's energy field. The crystalline entity shuddered, its holographic display fragmenting as the opposing energies collided. A high-pitched sound filled the chamber, painful to both human and Navorian ears. "It's working!" Seraphina shouted over the noise. "The confluence is containing the dimensional tear." The pedestal's spirals spun faster, the golden light of their blood ritual forcing the crystalline entity to collapse inward upon itself. With a final, reality-bending pulse, the entity imploded, leaving nothing but a small, inert crystal where the imposing structure had been. Silence fell over the chamber. Aidan and Seraphina remained kneeling, their bloodied hands still pressed to the floor, the golden light fading slowly. "Is it over?" Aidan asked quietly. "This manifestation, yes." Seraphina rose slowly, approaching the pedestal. "But the entity exists across dimensions. We've merely closed one gateway." She carefully collected the remaining crystal, sealing it in a backup containment unit. "This evidence should convince both our governments of the threat we face. With the infection purged from Admiral Jorath and his crew, they can testify to the infiltration." Aidan helped the still disoriented Admiral to his feet. "How are you feeling?" "Like I've awakened from a nightmare," Jorath replied, his voice rough with emotion. "I remember everything I did, but it was as if I were watching someone else control my actions." "You were." Seraphina's tone was gentler than Aidan had ever heard it. "Rest now. We have much to discuss when we return." As they prepared to leave the chamber, Aidan paused by the pedestal, studying the spiral patterns. "Your ancestors knew about these entities, didn't they? That's why they built the confluence, as a defense mechanism." "Perhaps." Seraphina stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. "The sacred texts speak of star demons that sought to turn world against world. I always thought they were metaphors. Sometimes the oldest stories contain the most truth." Aidan looked down at his bloodied palm, now pressed against Seraphina's in an unconscious gesture of solidarity. "We have a lot of work ahead of us." "Indeed. Convincing both our governments, rooting out any remaining infection, establishing protocols to prevent future infiltration." Despite the daunting challenges, Seraphina's voice held a note of hope Aidan hadn't heard before. "But we will face it together." "Together," Aidan agreed, suddenly very aware of their joined hands. "Does this mean you no longer find our marriage entirely objectionable?" Seraphina's bioluminescent patterns shifted to a hue Aidan hadn't seen before, a soft lavender that spread across her cheeks. "The Telvarks has proven, unexpectedly valuable." "High praise indeed." Aidan smiled. "Though I was hoping for something more along the lines of Aidan, your charm and wit have conquered my reluctant heart." To his surprise, Seraphina laughed, a genuine sound of amusement that transformed her usually severe features. "Humans. Always so dramatic." But she didn't release his hand as they made their way back to the ship, her fingers laced with his in a gesture that transcended both their cultures. 3 months later, Aidan stood on the balcony of their shared quarters in the Imperial Palace, watching Never Prime's 3 moons rise above the horizon. The diplomatic summit between Earth and the Navorian Empire had concluded successfully, with both governments signing the Carolan Accords, establishing not only clear boundaries but joint defense protocols against interdimensional threats. Seraphina joined him, her ceremonial armor exchanged for the simpler attire she now preferred when they were alone. "The Earth delegation has departed. Ambassador Harlow asked me to convey her continued astonishment at your unprecedented diplomatic achievement." "You mean she's still shocked I chose to stay?" Aidan turned to face his wife, a term he now used with genuine affection. "She fails to understand what you see in a temperamental alien princess." Seraphina's tone was light, but Aidan caught the hint of vulnerability beneath. "Then she hasn't been paying attention." He reached out, tracing the bioluminescent patterns along Seraphina's cheek, a gesture he now knew was deeply intimate in Navorian culture. "Though to be fair, you're still revealing yourself to me in new ways every day." Seraphina leaned into his touch, her usual reserve softening. "The Telvarks is a lifetime commitment. I have many secrets yet to share. And I look forward to discovering each one." Aidan's hand moved to the nape of her neck, drawing her closer. "Though I must admit, when I chose diplomatic service, I never imagined it would lead to marriage with a princess from another world." "Regrets?" Seraphina asked, her violet eyes searching his. "Not one." He closed the distance between them, his lips meeting hers in what had once been a foreign gesture but now carried the familiarity of genuine affection. When they parted, Serafina gestured toward the star-filled sky. The entity may return. Other gateways exist. Our work is not finished. I know. Aiden followed her gaze upward. But whatever comes, we face it together, as allies, as partners. As beloved, Serafina finished, using the ancient Navorian term that transcended simple translation, a word that meant more than spouse, more than lover, signifying souls aligned across lifetimes. The starlight reflected in her eyes as she turned back to him, her expression serene in a way he'd never seen during those first tense days of their arrangement. Whatever had begun as diplomatic necessity had transformed into something neither could have predicted but both now treasured. As the moons rose higher, casting their silver light across the crystalline spires of the palace, Aiden and Serafina remained on the balcony, two figures from different worlds standing as one against the vast cosmic darkness, and whatever it might bring.